Hey, welcome to EPN's Rocket Raygun Awards for 2017. We have looked at all kinds of categories celebrating the very best of the year, but right now it's time for us to take a look at some of the worst decisions or mishaps or missteps of the year with our Biggest Fails Award. Let's hear from the EPN family.
In a year this successful, the failures stand out even brighter, and in this case, I'm going to go with Mass Effect Andromeda. I know a lot of people are going to go with Battlefront 2 or Loot Crates or something, but Mass Effect Andromeda to me was a big letdown. This is BioWare. This is one of the greatest developers of all time, one of my favorite developers of all time, and they really missed on this. Obviously, it had a lot of glitches, but it also had a lot of problems in terms of its overarching design. It was cluttered, it was muddy. I just didn't really connect with the characters. I didn't really connect with this universe exploration and the way that you went to these different planets. I just didn't really like this video game very much. And that surprised me and was a huge disappointment early on in the year. Obviously, the further we got into the year, other failures tend to be a little bit more noticeable. But for me, that's the biggest disappointment, because I got to say, I'm not that invested in what the next BioWare thing is going to be, which is going to be, I think, Anthem in this case. I am now suddenly skeptical of a developer who I have long admired and loved. That's a bummer. So hopefully they can get back on track. Best of luck to you, but boy, Andromeda, skip it.
I think I can describe the biggest fails of the year in two letters, that being E and A. And it's a real trifecta of horror here. It was the way they shit the bed on Mass Effect Andromeda. It took a franchise as one of my favorite gaming franchises ever and ruined a sequel by giving it to the wrong people at the wrong time. There's the closing down of Visceral and the canning of Amy Hennig's Star Wars game that we were so excited about this Uncharted Star Wars game. And, last but certainly not least, the Battlefront 2 Loot Crate fiasco. I mean, lessons have been learned here. I think EA's learned lessons. I think the industry has learned lessons from the whole Loot Crate debacle. But EA's given us some great games, and they just kind of fucked up everywhere this year. And I hope they are going to take it to heart in 2018 and course correct. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of EA as a whole was the biggest failure and disappointment of this year.
Biggest fail of the year, 2017. It was a game I got to look at before it was finalized, and I thought, if they just do some things to this game, it's going to be so good. And then some of those things did not get done, and that game was not reviewed well by many. I still enjoyed it. I thought it was a nice kickstart to a bunch of new characters in the Mass Effect world, but it fell far short of the expectation that I had for it, and that saddened me. So Mass Effect Andromeda, I wish you were better.
Now, our friends at Kinda Funny and Happy Console Gamer also had some thoughts on this matter. Let's hear from them.
So every year in video gaming, there's always one big fail, or at least 10 of them. And I'm going to pick one here, and that has got to be the loot box debacle of EA. I have never seen the internet get so absolutely pissed off, and they had a right to. Just milking the consumer after you bought the game for other secret characters and things like that was ridiculous, and it killed what was a pretty good game. The loot boxes destroyed their own game, and what a folly, and then they had the audacity to remove it. Very embarrassing move.
Oh man, biggest fails? I mean, loot boxes, microtransactions. I think if we had if we have to give one person the title of biggest fail, it's EA with Battlefront, of course. But I think in the same vein, you've seen now with Destiny 2 expansion content, Bungie continue to step on the rake in the front yard. Like, hey, we're going to put our best foot... well, yeah, we just locked you out of trophies and achievements because we put the deal... Like, it was a slow build, I felt. Last year, Overwatch comes, hey, there's loot boxes in there. Yeah, people have been dealing with them forever. Marvel Heroes, I was playing that game and had loot boxes and stuff like that. And we were all like, okay, they're tinkering with it and blah, blah, blah. This is the year when loot boxes / microtransactions really reared their ugly head in AAA gaming. When you want to talk about Shadow of War, you want to talk about Destiny, you want to talk about Battlefront. And to see it start, you're like, okay, Shadow of War came, weathered the storm, fans who liked it, and then didn't do anything, set the world on fire. But to see Battlefront come out, and Battlefront 1 be a game everybody liked, enjoyed, played, but always like, we're a single player, blah, blah. This should have been such a slam dunk for EA to come out and be like, it's Battlefront 2, it's still the multiplayer you love, boom, single player, everybody's happy. And instead, before you were excited for the single player, and then when the beta started and people were like, wait, is this pay to win? Like, wait, I gotta play how long to unlock Darth Vader? Wait. And it was just nonstop bad news for them. But I think it's still a hats off situation in the fact they turned it off. All right, we'll dial it back. We're listening. I don't think, for me personally, and I can't speak for really what's happening, but from what I see in DICE, I don't think they set off to make a game that was gouging you or wanting your money or trying to screw you over or waste your time. I think they did take feedback that was, hey, just like Destiny did, hey, we want to play this game for a long time. How do you make that happen in 2017? And I think they were like, oh, well, people love Vader. They love these cool guys. Let's put them way out there. Let's see. If you see Vader in the game, you know that person's earned it. And that's where they got screwed. And the fact that people, well, I can still cheat this way to get that way, or I have to do this, or like your system doesn't make sense. Geez, I didn't even bring up NBA 2K18 in this conversation with their microtransactions and haircuts that cost $1 million virtual. It was just a nightmare for anybody out there who was like, you know what, I'm gonna put in-game currency in there, but I'm gonna make people really work for it.
Ooh, the biggest fails of 2017. I almost don't even want to talk about this, but to me, Star Wars Battlefront 2's single-player campaign, it had everything going for it. A really cool new character going from the Empire side, taking place between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. It's going to cover the 30 years, and then it kind of didn't really do any of those things well, and that was very sad to me. The other one would have to be Nintendo Switch's January presentation, when they came out and they're like, this is the Switch, this is how much it's going to cost, this is the launch lineup, and here are the games. And it was so very disappointing and so classic Nintendo. And for them to come back from that, and as the time recording this, have sold 10 million Switches and deliver experience after experience that are of a AAA amazing grade, it's really been inspiring. But yeah, wow, greatness from small beginnings.
And the EPN sponsors that opened up enough loot boxes won a chance to send us their thoughts in a video about the biggest fails of 2017.
Biggest fails, I would say it's EA, how they've handled their PR, how they've handled messaging to their consumer. You know, I'm a big fan of EA in the sense that they're local. You know, I like to support them. You know, I love the sports titles. You know, I love a lot of EA titles, including the DICE stuff and etc. But yeah, they've made some poor choices. They've made some choices that I think from a business standpoint might make sense to them, but you know, from a consumer standpoint, they're not necessarily really in line with what people want from them. So that's something that I hope they can recover in 2018.
My biggest fail of the year is Sony not supporting cross-platform play on the network. I have a PS4 and I pay for a PlayStation Plus membership and I buy all the games, but I can't play with my friends, and it's because I was an early adopter and picked PS4 before anyone else bought anything. And although I think I still picked the superior console, I still want to play with my friends. And the fact that Microsoft and Nintendo are doing cross-platform, and that we know it's all possible, I really don't understand why Sony's not just letting this happen. They've already taken my money, and this is the first time I've regretted buying a PS4. Not because of the hardware or because of the games or because of the console itself, you know. It's because of the service they're providing, and it just seems like they're just they're on top and they're comfortable. Biggest fail this year is no cross-platform play from PS4, and just because I want to play with my friends. Come on, Sony, make it work.
And fails this year. Well, I don't think that many, and I guess a lot of people would go back to the Battlefront 2 thingy going on there. But to me, it was Middle-earth, Shadow of War. I really loved the first game. It was one of the early PS4 titles that sold me on the system. I loved the looks of it back then, and I was really excited about playing it. Got it day one, and I was really disappointed. It felt so random. The graphics were not really. Be it 4K or pseudo 4K on the PS4 Pro, doesn't matter. It just didn't look good, and it felt so random. The quests you had to do, and I only played it maybe for 10-12 hours and just got sick of it and got rid of the game, actually, because there was just nothing in there for me. So that to me was a big fail.
When it comes to biggest fails, it's very easy to go to the issue with the loot boxes, especially with Battlefront 2. But even with that game, it's a multiplayer game, so I can somehow get what was the thinking process behind it. I don't get Shadow of War, and I'm a huge fan of Shadow of Mordor. And basically what the sequel does is giving this weird paywall that you have to pay money in order to actually finish the game, or you can grind for 20 hours. And that to me is a shame, because this is a single player game. This is not something I'm competing with someone online and I can use whatever I buy in future gameplay matches. Once I buy and I finish the game, it doesn't really give me the incentive to go back to it. And that to me is a major fail, because I love the franchise and it's such a major pain.
Finally, I want to talk about the biggest failure or the worst loss of 2017 in gaming, and that is the loss of Visceral Game Studios. Primarily known for making the Dead Space series, those guys were connoisseurs of making single-player experiences. Even though 3 is definitely cast in shadow for EA poking their whole hands in it and just kind of mucking with it, I still really enjoyed Dead Space 3. But what also adds to the loss is that they were responsible for games I never knew that they made as EA Redwood Studios. They were responsible for making a bunch of really awesome games like James Bond, Everything or Nothing, Lords of the Rings, The Third Age, or Lords of the Rings, The Return of the King. These games were so freaking fun to play. I put hundreds of hours into these games as a kid. And the fact that EA has put this studio in particular into the ground is really disturbing and troubling for me. This was a company that I actually really enjoyed. I enjoyed their products. I bought a lot of Dead Space merch, and when I noticed that Dead Space merch had disappeared from EA a few years ago, I had a very disturbing thought that they might go, and in the end that's what's happened. And I was really looking forward to the Uncharted-esque like Star Wars game that they were making. And I salute everyone who worked for Visceral, and I wish the best of luck to those guys, as I think that they got the shaft in the worst way possible, and I feel for them. And that's why I feel that the loss of Visceral Game Studios is the worst failure of 2017.
Clayton Blair, another one of our beloved EPN sponsors who didn't provide us with a video, did take some time to write us a nice note, and he says the biggest fail of the year was Electronic Arts with Mass Effect Andromeda. It could have been amazing, but it still has problems and has had since launch, and they never really fixed it, and there's been no DLC. Shame. Mass Effect Andromeda broke our hearts. My choice for biggest fail of 2017 would be the preponderance of loot boxes and the microtransaction discussion. I just feel like so much of our energy, which should be about love and amazement about the art of interactive entertainment, has shifted to suspicion and derision and lots of kind of cynical thoughts about what the publishers and developers are kind of building for us. And I think you can point the finger squarely at choices like loot boxes and microtransactions and making games that seem to always have their hands out. And I think that is what's going to win our Rocket and Raygun Award. We should almost pre-shape this thing into a loot box. I think loot boxes win the award for 2017, not the award that no one wants, for biggest fail of the year. Remember, we've got tons of other great categories for you to watch, as well as lots of other content. If you dig our stuff, hit that subscribe button, that little bell, and if you're so inclined, that sponsorship button too.